The following is a paid program, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent the opinions of the management of this station or Pamel Broadcasting. And the views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, and callers of this program are solely their own. They do not represent or reflect the views, policies, or official position of ACA, its affiliates, or its staff. ACA does not endorse any statements made during this broadcast. This is 1 in 31 Autism Today, a presentation from Anderson Center for Autism. 1 in 31 Autism Today is a weekly show devoted to autism spectrum disorder.
Good morning and welcome to 1 in 31 Autism Today. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky, and this is the podcast on all things related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm here today with Victoria Thiery, who is of No Limits Productions, right? Is that the name of your company? Or is it the name of the film?
Well, name of the film, yes. So we're No Limits LLC.
No Limits LLC. Victoria and I, it's great to see you again, albeit on screen again. Just to give our listeners a little bit of background, Victoria and I had a chance to have a conversation outside of the podcast. I don't know, it was probably a couple months ago now. And I was talking with you and Austin, who is not with us today, but I was talking with both of you about a film that you're working on, that you're creating. Because you had reached out to Anderson just to see if there was any interest in kind of watching your concept video and maybe giving some feedback, which always sparks my attention because I love it when people who are in the midst of any sort of creative project are saying, let's try to talk to the people that we're trying to represent in our art. Let's try to hear from their family members, caregivers, professionals. And that's exactly what you were doing. So we ended up having a great conversation where I got to learn a lot about the film that you're working on, but also about you and Austin, your background, your inspiration. So then we just thought we'd have you back on as a podcast guest so you can tell everybody about that. So I'm going to ask you to start, Victoria, just by giving us some background on you, and feel free to include as much as Austin as you'd like, and who you are and what you do.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. So I'm Victoria. My husband, Austin, and I are really just two creatives that went to school for marketing, and we ended up falling in love because we started writing things together. And so we have been toying around with a lot of different concepts and ideas over the years of what we wanted to actually pursue. He's always wanted to be in the movie industry. We were really attracted to writing meaningful stories. We just didn't quite know what that was yet. So this fell into our laps actually at a date night that we had at our very first lacrosse game a few years ago. And we were just so immersed in the sport. We knew a lot about hockey, baseball, football, right? But lacrosse was brand new to us, but it was so exciting. And we were just so taken that fans are erratic. And we see a fan up against the window and he's pounding the glass, like talking all of this trash. And we are writing down everything he's saying, thinking he's the funniest person in the world. And it really sparked our idea of what if we created a show, a TV series based off of lacrosse. And so that's kind of how it sparked it. And then we went on and thought, why don't we incorporate somebody like our best friend? His name is Adam, who we've known for 15 years. He is on the spectrum, and we've really learned a lot from him personally of how he's been able to evolve over time with the symptoms of autism. And he's such an interesting person because at first he couldn't make eye contact with you. He didn't want to touch you. He was very standoffish. But now all these years later, when he feels really protected and loved by us, he is the funniest, loudest person in the room, and he's the first one to give you a hug. And so we thought, how can we portray somebody like that in a hand-to-hand combat sport, and what would it ultimately look like? We knew that it would impact people because this is a very specific niche audience that not a lot of people are talking about or know a lot about. So not only that, this character is both a mixture of autistic and prone to seizures. So we really narrowed down a level of representation that has never been shown on television before. So that's the idea that we're going for.
So like the first one we talked, I mean, there's so much there just at the beginning. the evolution of where you've gotten to today and the decision to tell this story, I think really opened my eyes up to it's a little to me as a completely lay person when it comes to film and television. To me, it seems like almost a combination of a little bit documentary, or a little bit fiction, a little bit nonfiction. Like you're taking an experience you had that was a real experience, and then you're also inspired by a real person in your life, your best friend Adam, and you're kind of putting all of that together in a way that I think is very niche and very unique. I mean, had you been at a different game, maybe it would have been a different sport that you're highlighting, but there must have been something about the energy at that lacrosse game that then kind of worked in your creative brains, in terms of, what would it be like if our friend Adam was in the midst of this culture and this experience, while he's also living the parts of his life that are very real and everyday for him. So I think that that's very unique. I think it's really interesting. I also agree with you that and science does absolutely back this up. We talked about this when we met earlier. There are a large number of people who are autistic who also have a seizure disorder, but we want to be really clear, and this is something we talked about. And a lot of Anderson families who had a chance to watch your concept video kind of pointed out too that while you see some comorbidity there, which is just dual diagnoses, we want to be very upfront that not everybody with a seizure disorder is autistic, and not everybody who's autistic has a seizure disorder. That's not what you're trying to say, but you're telling the story about somebody who actually does have both of those diagnoses. Okay, let's backtrack. How did you meet Adam? Matt, you've been best friends with Adam for 15 years. Is this a college friendship? Is this after college? How did that happen?
Exactly right. Yes. So we all three went to the same school. My husband met him years before I did. And they happened to be in the same class. And it was like apparently this very complicated finance class. And Adam is really wicked smart. And so he's able to kind of do this stuff with his eyes closed. Whereas my husband, math is not his strong suit. He's great with using his words, not math. But Adam kind of, was kind enough to help tutor him, and they bonded over watching TV shows together. So they ended up coming over to each other's houses, and he got to the point that he was comfortable enough to break the news to him that he was on the spectrum. And prior to that, he didn't have very many people that he was close to aside from his immediate family. He didn't have somebody that he felt, in a right space to be able to share that and feel like that person is not going to judge them in any sort of way. And so my husband's reaction, and we'll talk about it to this day, is basically he was like, okay, do you want to, that's fine. Like, if you want to just keep watching. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like there's nothing wrong with you. And I think that really led down a path that Adam felt like he could just continue opening up and really be a part of our family and our friendship. And that's definitely how we view him now.
That's really great. And I think that you're touching on sort of that disclosure versus non-disclosure. And I hear about that a lot. It's something that we've been talking about. We have an arm of our organization that does a lot of consultation and training and employment training, like going to employers and helping them become more inclusive. And one of the things that we want to be very cognizant of is that some people want to self-disclose and some people don't, and some people won't ever. And that's all okay wherever you fall in that decision-making, tree or whatever is completely valid in your own personal choice. But so it's even just that part of the story that you have connected with this person who wasn't self-disclosing. And then I would think that maybe this is the case for a number of people who might be listening or family members might be listening, where it takes meeting the right person to all of a sudden open up that or unlock that part of you that maybe you haven't been wanting to share. So kudos to Austin for putting out whatever he was putting out that made Adam feel safe. And then here we are 15 years later, and you're all still hanging out and spending time together and really good friends. And obviously through that first self-disclosure, Adam has opened up a world of new friends for himself, right?
Yes,
That's great.
exactly. And it was exciting for him because when we were coming up with this project, we did consult him. We took it very seriously
Yeah.
to pretty much bring back every topic, every idea, every sentence. He put his stamp of approval on. It's like we're networking with you. Yeah.
Amazing. So let's get into that. We have 2 minutes, then we'll take a break, but let's use these 2 minutes and then we'll dive into it even more deeply in the second half. Start to tell us about No Limits and about like this series. And how people can get more.
Absolutely. So this idea is basically a sports drama that focuses on a neurodivergent athlete and his journey. The heart of it is really the relationship he has with his mother, who is not only terrified to let him go and follow his dream, but somehow is able to support him along the way. So we definitely want to show a mother and son's relationship as they really overcome these challenges together. And then it will show over time how he is able to impact every single person in his community, whether it be a friendship, somebody on the team, his coaches, the arena owner, everybody in some form is going to be impacted by our character named Colin. And it will touch on a lot of different topics, whether it be about neurodiversity or about, self-discovery, friendship, everything will have its place, and it's going to be really exciting.
Yeah. My first reaction, I think, that I gave you was about the relationship with his mom. When I saw, the concept video, because I interact a lot with Anderson families, and I've been there 20 years, and thankfully, with every job that I've had there, every role I've played, I've had a connection to families, either those who've been at Anderson for many, many years, or brand new families who are bringing their child there for the first time. And I wouldn't say it's just moms, but certainly the connection and that kind of the way you captured the looks on her faces, that when she's saying nothing, but so much comes across in terms of a complete mixture of I'm so incredibly proud of you and sort of in shock and awe that you've gotten to this point as a young adult. But I'm also terrified and worried, and I'm going to be worried, until you come home, until the next day, until the end of the season, until, I thought you captured that really beautifully and in such a heartfelt way. We are going to take a short break on that note, but when we come back, we're going to hear more about No Limits and the rest of what it's about and how people can get involved. This is 1 in 31 Autism Today. We'll be right back.
Today alone, 5,370 people in the United States will be diagnosed with cancer. That's why Stand Up to Cancer funds and develops the newest and most promising cancer treatments. Stand Up to Cancer wants to provide you with every opportunity to join in this mission. By donating your home, land, or commercial property, you can help Stand Up to Cancer fund innovative cancer research. Stand Up to Cancer makes the process easy, and it may be tax deductible. Visit standuptocancer.org/giveproperty to learn more.
I'm Angela Bassett. As a first responder on screen, I know what it means to act fast in an emergency. In real life, the same urgency can save lives, especially when it comes to food allergy. For 33 million Americans, one bite can cause a life-threatening reaction. Now, there's a needle-free option, a new way to carry epinephrine. Know the risk, know the options. Be ready to act. Learn more at foodallergy.org/ready to act.
And now, 1 in 31 Autism Today continues on 100.7 WHUD. This is a weekly community affairs presentation from the Anderson Center for Autism.
Welcome back to 1 in 31 Autism Today, the podcast on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky, Chief Development Officer at Anderson Foundation for Autism. And on behalf of the Foundation and Anderson Center for Autism, just welcoming you back to the podcast with our guest today, Victoria Thiery of No Limits LLC. And Victoria, you were just getting started talking to us about this, sports drama TV series that's really going to highlight a neurodivergent young adult main character, Colin, and the sport of lacrosse, which is also part of your inspiration. We were talking a little bit about big aspect of the story being the connection or the relationship between Colin and his mom. but then you were branching out to, all these other people in the story who are going to be impacted by Colin, and of course, vice versa, he will be impacted by them. What is not to jump to the end here, but maybe we could do that and then go backwards a little bit. What are you hoping that people who watch this show will take away from it? Are you looking for people to get a really strong sense of the reality of living as a neurodivergent individual and the people surrounding that person? Or are you looking for really an entertainment value and kind of blurring the lines a little bit? What do you want people to, like, when they're done, say, I need more of that because X?
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it. It is definitely a combination of the two, in the sense that we want to talk about heavy concepts in a way that people will be able to digest them through the entertainment of sports, and this idea that we're involving the corruptive side of the sporting industry too. So our main character is a little different. He's able to view the world in a different way than everyone else. So he's able to pick up on these patterns that the villain of the story is going to be doing. So that is what's going to be super fascinating and keep everybody's attention. But then the other side to that is really peeling back the curtain of what people go through on the day-to-day basis. What is the actual reality? Because what we noticed, especially with a lot of TV shows and movies today, even though there is a lot more incorporation of neurodiversity and special needs, and including characters that have all these different challenges and obstacles, they do it in such a way that it's a bit unrealistic and extreme, with especially movies about autism. Sometimes they treat these people like they are side characters, or like superior in intelligence and supernatural almost, when in actuality, that is not how a regular life is. And we really feel that this is going to touch a lot of people that feel closed off, in their own shell, that giving them the encouragement to make them feel like they can do something as insane as joining a lacrosse league, because that's what they're passionate about, then we want to give them the courage to do that. And one thing that really has stuck with me is we ended up showing this and talking about this concept to a fellow that we met at a convention over Christmas. And he has Asperger's. And he had mentioned to us that after seeing everything and listening, he said, I really have always felt like I'm an outsider. I'm somebody that people will never understand. And when you showed this to me, I feel like other people will get it now. Other people will ask me and not make me feel like, I'm a specimen of some kind. They'll have a better grasp of what it's really like to go through life. So yeah, that's the idea. That's
great. And I think you're getting feedback because you're reaching out and asking for it, which I want to highlight just for you and Austin, as as the people running the show here with No Limits LLC. This is, I wouldn't say that it never happens, but I think it's important to highlight when it does, so people recognize that anything you're working on, whether it's a book or, teaching a class or putting together, maybe a gym project or a sports team or something where you're trying to attract and interest a neurodivergent population, or teaching people in communities, employers maybe, but anybody really, to be more inclusive. It's not a one-way street. It's not, well, I've read all these books, or I have this friend and so I know what it is. You have to be willing, I think, to make something where the end product is really, what it really works and it's very sincere. You have to be willing to take that information back from people. And again, that struck me just in the way that you wrote to us saying, hey, would you be interested in giving us feedback on this? And so I just want to, again, highlight that. I do think, of course, a lot of people I talk to also, feel marginalized or left out, or like they're sort of missing something, but also that others are missing something about them. So I do hope that is one of the outcomes of the show that people take away. You gave us a little bit of a teaser about there's some corruption and some drama certainly in the show. We won't give it all away, but that sounds like a good combination. Have you had any moments as you've been getting this feedback or working on the script and working on the filming and stuff where you've really had to pivot in an unexpected way, where you were sort of like, well, I thought that was really going to work, but no way, that's not, that looks fake, it's not real, or it just doesn't work, or there has to be more of the story here. Have there been moments like that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's what's been so fascinating of us trying to reach out to as many different experts as possible. Everything from, just how society views neurodivergent people. We had an expert about that, somebody about epilepsy, like really having as many different point of views weigh in on this was crucial for us because we are still fleshing out the whole season. So the goal is to have 8 episodes. We have our pilot done. We want to give that over to potential producers and investors. But right now we're making the rest of the story flesh out to where it is as authentic as possible. So one of the people we actually met recently, we had never heard of a concept about music therapy being used for people that are neurodivergent before.
Okay.
And yeah, she and her team were just incredible. And they really opened our eyes of how we could incorporate that into the storyline, especially with like a therapist helping him break out of not only just a routine, but like kind of a mentality of where he feels that he is stuck. So we've really taken a step back and looked at the story overall and thought, okay, how can we take somebody that feels really small in the beginning, feeling like he can't connect with people, that he's really shy, but he knows that the sport will help him come to life. So we're going to slowly show how music can be incorporated into that and help him get to that point. So that's definitely how we've changed things up a little bit since the last time we talked to you.
That's really exciting. That's great. And yeah, music therapy, lots of different kinds of art, expression, can help individuals, and everything is really still individualized. Not everybody responds to music therapy, but I think that's great. And actually, I was just listening to another podcast where the host was talking about how when they work out, they and even my own family members, when they're going to go work out or do something, their AirPods go in and there they are, listening to whatever they've got going. And I do the same thing when you're getting pumped up for something. You typically often will look to music to kind of support what you're feeling, whether it's, getting worked up or calming down. So I would think that music therapy aspect, which is different, obviously, than just listening to music on your own, but the connection between that and the athleticism that you're going to highlight in the series as well makes a lot of sense. That's great. And again, another just shout out to you're obviously finding the right people with a lot of varied expertise and doing that. I know some of the Anderson families that I reached out to on your behalf just to give them a chance to give you feedback had written emails that I forwarded you. What was that? Was that helpful to you as you read them? Did you appreciate anything kind of new that stood out to you? I know that they love being asked to share their perspectives, even though their child may not be exactly like the character Colin, but what was that like receiving that feedback?
No, it was so appreciated. I mean, anytime that we get, especially families, to weigh in on this, because it's really going to focus on somebody that has dealt with these quote unquote problems, which they're not really problems since they were very young, to them being an adult. That is something not everybody gets to experience, but a large part of the population is handling right now. So a couple of things that stood out to me were they were so appreciative that we are creating something that's not, we call it stupid TV, which is we're not trying to spoon fade things to you. We're not trying to create some crime thriller. We're creating somebody that is unique and special in his own right. And he's discovering things on his own and choosing to do the right thing. It's not just some over crazy storyline. It makes sense. It brings home the love between him and his mother. And then they were great about noting different tics that we hadn't considered before, like tics that are often brought up in kids that they tend to either mask or find a way, to incorporate them into their daily lives. And so we loved that because a key part of our character is at first he is hiding away that part of himself. And especially when you had mentioned employment, with HIPAA laws and things like that, people aren't required to disclose if they are on the spectrum. It is entirely up to them to connect with their employer to decide, like, okay, I am this is what I'll need for accommodation wise. Yeah. So we thought, okay, for this character, he is so desperate and thankful to be given this chance of being on his dream team. He doesn't want to mess it up, right? So he is kind of, shying away from people and really, I hate to use the word hiding again, but like really trying not to show every single one of his tics. And over time, throughout the series, people will start noticing them, but he'll start to be okay with that. And people will accept him at the very end exactly the way he is.
Well, it's a beautiful story. I wish you all the best. I think the lead up to all of it, as far as you can share with us, is great. So I can only anticipate the outcome will be equally wonderful. And as I said, it's been a real pleasure meeting you and talking with you in Austin. And I hope you do keep us posted on how things progress. Is there any website or any place you'd like to direct our listeners to go to get more information about you and the project?
Absolutely. Please do check out our website. It's called thetheriesfeature.com. So this has the video. It's on the very first page. It has been circulating in the film networks and a couple of competitions that we've either been selected, nominated, or won, which has been really exciting for us. Yes. And we also have a donation platform with Save Butter that's on there. We developed a couple of products to help us raise money to help make this happen, between a music trivia card game, which is really fun for families, and then a autistic, positive, friendly, and cozy adult/kid coloring book, which we just came out with in January. So we would love for people to check it out and let us know what you think about these products and the video.
Great. We will get all that information into the write-up when we post this interview. And Victoria, Thiery, thank you so much for coming on the show today and talking about No Limits. It's really a great project. And like I said, I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
This is 1 in 31, the weekly podcast on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky, and remember, Anderson cares.
You've been listening to 1 in 31, Autism Today, a weekly presentation from Anderson Center for Autism. Join them for another edition of the show next weekend.